Hey, welcome to The Scary Cuban, the podcast where we explore supernatural encounters, unexplained mysteries, and eerie tales from the Cuban community. I'm DJ Alex Gutierrez. If you're Cuban, chances are you've heard a story or two. Maybe it happened to a friend, a relative, a neighbor, or maybe it happened to you. From strange shadows in Abuela's house to mysterious visitors, prophetic dreams, haunted places, and things that simply cannot be explained, our culture is filled with stories that have been passed down for generations. There seem to be a lot of these stories out there, so I thought I'd share a few that you sent in to me. So turn down the lights, grab a cafecito if you're brave enough, and join me as we venture into the unknown. And remember, these are your stories. If you have any supernatural encounter, a ghost story, a family legend, or an unexplained event that you'd like to share, send it to me at djalexgutierrez@yahoo.com. Yes, that still exists. Just put Cuban Scary Story in the subject line. Now let's begin. This is The Scary Cuban. Every once in a while, someone sends me a story that refuses to leave my mind. A listener recently wrote me and said, "Alex, this really happened to me." As I read it, I realized this happens to a lot more people than we care to admit. Maybe someone you've loved visited you one last time. Maybe you've heard footsteps when no one else was home. Maybe you've smelled your grandmother's perfume years after she passed. Growing up Cuban in Miami, we didn't need scary movies. Our grandparents had enough stories to keep us awake forever. Never whistle after midnight. Never answer someone calling your name. Oye, Alex. Unless you know exactly who it is. Never play a Ouija board. And if your Cuban mother ever whispered, "Aquí hay algo malo," you packed your bags. Here's our listener's story for tonight. I'm going to tell you something that happened to me. Not something someone told me. Not something I read online. Something I lived. And even today, 43 years later, I still cannot explain it. Back in 1983, I was 19 years old. I was living in Sweetwater, right across the street from that little pet cemetery on Flagler and 109 Avenue. Yes, that one. Now, before anyone starts making Stephen King jokes, no, nothing strange ever happened inside that cemetery. At least, nothing I ever witnessed. The oddest thing I remember was hearing bagpipes one afternoon. I looked outside expecting some military funeral. Instead, it was for a retired police dog. Even in Miami, our dogs receive more respect than some politicians. But this story isn't about the cemetery. It's about the man who lived across the street. There was a Cuban gentleman who had recently rented the little house across from ours. Late 40s, divorced, gray hair, almost white, always dressed neatly. Very polite, the kind of man your Cuban mother would describe as, "Ay, ese señor está bien parecido. He's good looking." And even if she had absolutely no interest in him, he always smiled, always said hello. But there was a sadness in his eyes, the kind you don't notice until years later. Whenever my mother and I were leaving, he'd walk over just to talk, nothing important.
Buenos días, mi gente. ¿Cómo están ustedes? Óyeme, qué bien se ven las dos. La verdad que, oye, está el día bello.
The weather, work, life. Looking back, I think he was lonely. Very lonely.
Y nada, aquí, camino para el trabajo, ¿entiendes? La lucha, la luchita.
Now, our apartment wasn't exactly known for good vibes. It was one of those old Miami fourplexes, 2 apartments downstairs, 2 upstairs. My younger brother swore something was wrong with the place. He told my mother he kept waking up seeing dark figures standing in the hallway, not moving, just watching. Kids nearby had supposedly been fooling around with a Ouija board. According to every Cuban grandmother in Miami, that explained everything. Then lightning struck our building. Not nearby, our building. Our television exploded, glass everywhere. The smell of burnt wires filled the apartment. Meanwhile, I was less worried about ghosts than the flying Miami cockroaches that waited until 2 in the morning to attack me whenever I went for a glass of water. Those things were demons all by themselves. I was attending Miami-Dade College, working evenings at Bird Eye's in International Mall. One quiet morning, I backed my car out. As I looked across the street, there he was, sitting on the planter in front of his house, exactly as I'd seen him dozens of times before, solid, perfectly normal. He smiled, slowly raised his hand, and waved goodbye. I smiled, raised my hand, and waved back. Nothing strange, nothing unusual, just a friendly gesture from a friendly neighbor. I drove away. That afternoon, I walked inside. My mother was making dinner. Smell of garlic, picadillo, I think, onions, and, of course, Cuban coffee filled the apartment. I casually said, "Mommy, I saw our neighbor this morning." She stopped stirring, didn't turn around, didn't answer. Then very slowly, she looked at me. "¿Qué tú dijiste?" "What did you say?" I said, "I saw our neighbor." Silence. Then she whispered, "No puede ser. This can't be." I laughed. "Sure it can. He was sitting outside." She walked toward me. Her face had turned completely white. Then she said something I have never forgotten. Not once, not ever. Very slowly. "Mija, eso es imposible. That's impossible." "Impossible?" I said. "Because..." He died 2 weeks ago. The ambulance had come. Neighbors watched them carry him away. He had a massive heart attack. Later, my brother confirmed it. He knew the man's daughter. There was no mistake. The funeral had already happened. 2 weeks before I waved at him. I remember trying to convince myself I had mistaken someone else. Except I hadn't. I could still see him. His shirt, his face, his smile, the way the morning sunlight reflected off his gray hair. He wasn't transparent. He wasn't glowing. He cast shadows. He looked alive. Years later, my mother quietly confessed something. She said, "We should have invited him over. We should have offered him cafecito. He looked so alone." But life got in the way. Work, school, responsibilities. We assumed there would always be another tomorrow. Maybe there wasn't. I often wondered, did he come back because no one ever really said goodbye? Or did he know, for reasons I'll never understand, that I could see him? People ask me today, "Do you believe in ghosts?" No, I don't. I don't have to believe. Belief is for things you've never experienced. I remember every detail, and every now and then, when I drive through Sweetwater, I find myself looking towards that little house, almost expecting to see him again. Sitting there, smiling, patiently waiting, one hand slowly rising for one final wave. So tonight, before you go to bed, ask yourself one question. If someone waved to you tomorrow morning, would you be absolutely certain they were alive?